Buenas noches, profesor. Disculpe, la moderadora
Buenas
tuvo
noches.
una urgencia. Tuve que ingresar aquí. Ya.
Vale, está bien.
Em, Voy a compartir los parámetros. Buenas noches, estudiantes. Buenas noches, estimado profesor. Vamos a dar inicio con la clase del día de la noche de hoy. Voy a compartir los parámetros para el buen desarrollo de esta sesión. Las sesiones se graban, pueden verlas nuevamente en la plataforma virtual. Les solicitamos que por favor silencien sus micrófonos, puedan activarlo cuando quieran hacer consultas o aportes con el permiso del docente. Le pedimos que mantengan su cámara activa de no poder hacerlo, enviar su excusa a través del chat de Zoom, de lo contrario será retirado de la sesión y le serán restados puntos en la heteroevaluación del docente. Mi rol como modelador es facilitar y apoyar en la parte técnica. Cualquier consulta la puede hacer a través del chat y por último les exhorto a tener bolígrafo y papel a mano para hacer sus anotaciones y aprovechar al máximo la clase de hoy.
Okay, let's start the class. I'm gonna share the presentation. Okay, welcome to American Literature. For this first session, I'm Professor Santos Monrroy, and I will talk about background to American literature. A reader lives 1,000 lives before he dies. American literature are the written work produced in the United States and its colonies. During its early history, America was a series of British colonies on the eastern coast of the present-day United States. Therefore, its literary tradition begins linked to the broader tradition of English literature. So it's basically very important to understand that uh, before the United States get the independence, it was composed of 13 colonies. So those 13 colonies were part of the England territory. So now I will explain more about the 13 colonies in the United States. Back then, the New England. The 13 original states were New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. Those are the 13 original states, were the first 13 British colonies. Remember that British colonies traveled across the Atlantic Ocean from Europe. So in the first trip, they also introduced the literature in the New England. So those 13 colonies were called back then the New England. As the first period, it's very important now explain the colonial in New England. Remember, the New England were the group of the 13 colonies. So it is like that no other colonies in the history of the world were as intellectual as the Puritans. Between 1630 and 1690, there were as many university graduates in the northern section of the United States, known as New England, as England itself. The Puritan definition of good written was that which brought home a full awareness of the God importance of worship God and of the spiritual danger that the soul faced on earth. Puritan style varied enormously from complex metaphysical poetry to homely journals and crushingly pedantic religious history. Wherever the style or genre, certain themes remain constant. So why or what is worshiping God? Worshipping God means to show respect and love for God or for a God, especially by praying or having religious service. Anne Bradstreet, 1612, 1672. The first published book of poems by an American was also the first American book to be published by a woman, Anne Bradstreet. It is not surprising that the book was published in England, given the lack of printing presses in the early years of the first American colonies. Born and educated in England, Anne Bradstreet was the daughter of an estate manager. She emigrated with her family when she was 18. Her husband eventually became governor of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, which later grew into the great city of Boston. So now let's see, where was the first book of poems by an American woman, and what Puritan thought about good writing? Okay, to answer the first question, the first book of poems by an American woman was published in England. And it was written by a woman. To answer the question number two, Puritan thoughts about good writing, because Puritans were extremely religious people. So they were very concerned about rules. So if they acted in that way, everything that was published must be religious, respectful back then at that time. Now, the American Englishman, the 18th century American Englishman was a movement marked by an emphasis on rationality rather than tradition. Scientists inquired instead of unquestioning religious dogma and representative government in place of monarchy. Englishmen thinkers and writers were devoted to the ideals of justice, liberty, and equality as the nature rights of a man. Women writers. A number of accomplished Revolutionary era women writers have been rediscovered by feminist scholar Susan Rosen, 1762-1824, was one of America's first professional novelists. Her 7 novels, including in the best-selling seduction story Charlotte Temple in 1791. Now we have transcendentalism. The transcendentalism movement was a reaction against 18th century rationalism and a manifestation of the general humanitarian trend of 19th century thought. The movement was based on a fundamental belief in the unity of the world and God. The romance The romance form is dark and forbidden, indicating how difficult it is to create an identity without a stable society. Most of the romantic heroes die in the end. All the sailors except Ismael are drowned in Moby Dick, and the sensitive but sinful minister Arthur Dimmesdale dies at the end of the Scarlet Letter. The self-divided tragic note in American literature becomes dominant in the novels even before the Civil War of the 1860s, manifested the greatest social tragedy of a society at war with itself. What's the difference between the Transcendentalism period and the Romance period? In the Romance periods, most of the time they were fighting about how to be stable in a society that was just improving some rules, and most of the rules just was based on religion aspect. And most of the novels that were written back then about the Romance periods, the main character die at the end. Now I will talk about Nathaniel Hawthorne, 1804, 1864. Nathaniel, a 19th-generation American of English descent, was born in Salem, Massachusetts. Many of Hawthorne's stories are set in Puritan New England, and his greatest novel, The Scarlet Letter, 1850, has become the classic portrayal of Puritan America. It tells of the passionate, forbidden love affair linking a sensitive, religious young man, the Reverend Arthur Dimmesdale, and the census beautiful townsperson Hester Prynne. Set in Boston around 1650, during early Puritan colonization, the novel highlights the Calvinistic obsession with morality, sexual repression, guilt, and confession and spiritual salvation. Edgar Allan Poe, 1809, 1849. Edgar Allan Poe Southerner vision is mixed with elements of realism, parody, and burlesque. He refined the short story genre and invented detective fiction. Many of his stories prefigure the genres of science fiction, horror, and fantasy so popular today. William Carlos Williams, 1883-1963. William Carlos Williams was a practicing pediatrician throughout his life. His early poetry reveals the influence of Imagism. He later went on to champion the use of colloquial speech. His ear for the natural rhythm and American English held free Americans' poetry from the iambic meter that have dominated English verse since the Renaissance. His sympathy for ordinary working people, children, and everyday events in modern urban setting makes his poetry attractive and accessible. The Red Wheelbarrow, 1923, like a Dutch still life, find interest and beauty in everyday objects. Now let's see the 20th century American drama. American drama imitated English and European theater until well into the 20th century, often played from England or translated from European language-dominated theater seasons. During the 19th century, melodramas with explored democratic figures and clear contrast between good and evil had been popular. Plays about social problems such as slavery also drew large audiences. Sometimes these plays were adaptations of novels like the Uncle Tom's Cabin. Not until the 20th century would seriously place attempt aesthetic innovation. Okay, besides the information given, I will also talk about the subject as well. It's very important to check the platform, read the readings that you have in each of the 5 modules, check your activities, study and practice for the test. Remember that the recording of this class will be uploaded to the platform so you can get access and check it out. This class is also a summary of the readings that you have available there. In case you have any questions about your tasks or your assignments, you can text to me and I will be answering, responding your questions. So hope you have a nice week or a half weekend. Have a nice weekend as well.
Listo, profesor, gracias. Gracias al. De esta manera vamos por terminar la clase el día de hoy. Espero que pase buenas noches. Bendiciones.
Gracias, igual.